Well, hello. This is Greg Andruk and bringing you another Business Freedom Conversation live. We've got a really poignant show for you here today because we're going to talk about what small business owners in April identified as their number one problem, the inability to hire qualified employees. And as my guest today, I have Ryan Englin of Core Matters. Ryan is the hiring expert. Core Matters is the company that helps you do your total focus on how you hire people, who you identify, everything. And but in full disclosure, Ryan had a little conflict, so we had to record his portion about an hour ago. So I've got a tape of that portion, but you're going to find it really, really interesting. Ryan's a great speaker, and he has several points for you to follow if you want to improve your hiring and get the people you want to help your company make money. So I'm going to run the tape now. And at the end, he's got a free item. It's worth hundreds of dollars. He now has a new tool that you can evaluate your whole process and get a report back, and it shows you the different things that you might want to improve on. So let me move it over here and start.
I've got something new, something a little different today that I'm really excited to share with your audience. And some of the things that we run into when it comes to recruiting and hiring is that people don't get it. I hear so many employers that are just like, nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to, everybody's entitled. Everybody just wants to collect a paycheck, but they don't actually want to show up and do anything. And I want to shatter that belief today because it's incorrect. It's something that's easy to fall into. And so I've got some cartoons that I've put together that might help illustrate some of the things that we're both seeing and feeling as employers. But before I get into that, I just want to introduce myself, Ryan Englin, CEO and founder of Core Matters, developer of the CoreFit hiring system. And we work with entrepreneurs and small businesses to help them put our process in place so they can attract, hire, and retain whenever they need. And our vision at Core Matters is to create positive work environments for 500,000 employees. I really want to make an impact. I want to see big change. I think there's huge opportunity, especially for small businesses, to be able to transform the way that they attract employees, the way they hire people, and ultimately retain them. Because I don't know about you, Greg, but I find that a lot of times people don't have a hiring problem. They have a retention problem. Mm-hmm. And they can hire people real fast, but they don't stay very long. And so it's not a hiring issue, that's a retention issue. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. So in our work, I use a lot of analogies and metaphors just to help people understand some of the concepts. And one of them that I'm very big on is that recruiting is like fishing. And I don't know if you've ever fished before, but there are a lot of decisions that you have to make, and there are some skills that you have to make. But once you have the gear, once you know where to go, once you know how to actually get the fish in the boat, fishing becomes a very inexpensive way of catching tonight's meal. And it's the same thing with recruiting. Once you have the skills and the process and your team knows what to do, it can become very inexpensive and very quick to get people to board your bus and have them be a part of your team. So one of the first questions I always ask is, when you're going fishing, what's the first decision you have to make? I always get people thinking about this. Greg, can you tell me what do you think is the first decision you make?
The profile of who you're looking for. What's the type of person that I want?
You were absolutely right. So when you know, like, let's just go back to the fishing metaphor. When you know what kind of fish you want to catch, you know where to go, you know what time of day or year, you know what bait to use, you know what gear to bring with you. All of those decisions pretty much get made for you. And it's the same thing with recruiting. So often I see employers just put out a job description on Indeed and cross their fingers and they'll take whatever they get. And they find that they often get a lot of people applying that they didn't want. Or they think, you know what, I guess this is as good as it gets. And they just hire the least of the worst, right? And really what we need to do is we need to get clear on what we want. But when you're not clear on what you want, this is what happens. We got a couple of guys sitting here saying, so where do you want to go fishing? I don't know. Let's just go someplace close. And at the end of the day, they find that they're fishing in a little river coming out of this power plant, and it is not what they want. And this is akin to that idea of, I don't know, where should we post our job? Where should we go to get good people? Oh, I guess I'll go to Indeed. Right? I guess I'll go to Craigslist, or I guess I'll just post an ad at the local coffee shop. But the thing is if we don't know who we want, we don't know where those people are spending their time. We don't know what rivers and streams they're fishing in, or they're swimming in. And so we often end up throwing mud up against the wall, hoping something sticks. And then when we're disappointed in the results we get, we just settle. And we take whatever we have in front of us. And these guys are going to take that little three-eyed fish home, and who knows what they're going to do with it. But if they're hungry, they might give it a shot. And it's the same thing that we see with hiring. We need someone, we're desperate, we know we're losing lots and lots of revenue, and yet we hire them anyways. We hope they're not as bad as they were in the interview. But the reality is, when you interview someone, that's the best they show up. They're not going to just miraculously get better because they now have a job. So the next thing we run into, so these guys just went somewhere close because they didn't know where to go, because they didn't know what kind of fish they were after. But then they go someplace else and they're like, we think we're clear. We're going to go somewhere, but it turns out to be the wrong spot. And you see on the left here, we have what I call Lake Indeed. You and millions of other employers are fishing from the same lake. And we're sitting here thinking, why aren't there any good people on Indeed? Well, it's overfished, it's overcrowded, and I promise you, somebody's spending more on sponsored ads than you are, period. There are some companies spending millions of dollars per month just on Indeed to get their ads to go to the top of the list. So unless that's you, there's somebody spending more. Meanwhile, you've got this guy who didn't go too far off, but he went somewhere new. He went somewhere fresh, and it's not overfished, and the fish are biting like crazy, and he's just catching like crazy. And you might be in a market where you're sitting here thinking to yourself, how is it that my competitors are so good at hiring, but I'm not? And yeah, they might be dumb luck, or they might be fishing somewhere that you're not. And when we're looking for hiring, we want to know not only where are the right people, where do they spend their time, but where can we go so we are the big fish, so that we are the ones that stand out. So our marketing and the work that we do, whether it's in the community or in that location, gets noticed, and it's not drowned out by all the noise. Sometimes that might be getting involved in the community. I have my own podcast, and we talk all about, it's actually called the Talent Tackle Box, because it's how to put new tips, new tools into your tackle box so you can go out and attract and hire the right people. And I had a guest on the show and we were talking about this, and he actually realized that the wraps that he has on his vehicles that are driving around town, yes, they're moving billboards, but he actually found more value in changing what was on the wrap and made it a recruiting billboard than he did a customer acquisition billboard. And when people started seeing his involvement in the community and the nonprofits he was a part of and the things that his people were doing to give back, that took him so much further than when he was using that same stuff for acquiring customers. So sometimes you just have to be in the right place. And when you're really clear on who you want, it's much easier to find out where those people are spending their time. Here's another one that I see happen a lot. We use the wrong gear. The reality is there's no college degree that you can go get or course you can take. There's not a lot of training out there outside of what we do at Core Matters that helps people know, am I using the right gear? Am I attracting them with the right stuff? Am I able to get them into our company for an interview? And then do I have the right gear to help them there? One of the things that we encourage everybody to use is what's called an applicant tracking system. And that is one of the most critical pieces of gear you can have in your recruiting arsenal. So here's what happens. We go out fishing. We're like, hey, I've got a stick of dynamite. That's going to get me all sorts of stuff. You're right, it is. And you can notice there's only a couple of fish in there that look like they're even worth having. But we do this. We throw everything at it, the kitchen sink, everything. And then we get all this stuff that we have to sort through. And I don't know about you, Greg, or about people watching right now, but I don't know a lot of entrepreneurs that are sitting and going, I have tons of extra time to sort through the trash and figure out what's really worth keeping and what's not. But that's what we do because we don't know that the gear is out there. We don't know how to use it. And we don't really like change sometimes. Sometimes it's easier to just stick with what we know. These guys clearly know how to fish with dynamite, and so that's what they stick with. But that applicant tracking system I was talking about can automate so much of this process for you. Not only can it automate posting your jobs to the job boards, but it can also automate screening applicants as they come in. So the ones that you don't want to talk to just get moved along, passed on, and they get notified, hey, you weren't a good fit, and you got to do nothing. So when you have the right gear, it can save you a ton of time. And as you know, in business, time is money. The next thing I see them doing is they use the wrong bait. You know, there's this belief right now in the marketplace that if you want the best people, you have to pay the highest wages. And we've found that to be untrue across the board. It does not matter your industry, does not matter your location, does not matter if you're looking for skilled or unskilled, does not matter. Money is not a primary motivator for employees. Now, there is a point where you do have to pay people more if you don't look like a very good company to work for. You know, if you've got 1.8 stars on Glassdoor or Indeed, or if your reviews on Yelp are low, or your company has a website that looks like it's 20 years old and you're not even sure if you're in business anymore, yes, you are going to have to pay more because it's the only way you're going to stand out. But there's so many other ways you can stand out. But when you get so focused on just the money, this is what happens. You see, we're sitting here thinking, I don't understand why no one's biting. I'm doing the thing that used to work, right? The worm used to work, the high wages used to work, but it's not working anymore. Or I'm getting someone and they're leaving me for more wages somewhere else. And it becomes this circle. And you bring someone in with more wages, they leave you for more wages, this revolving door. You bring them in for more wages, they leave you for more wages because we're hiring the wrong people. We're using the wrong bait. And if you look at companies like Amazon and Uber, and I know a lot of them are going through layoffs right now, but people still want to work there. It's not as easy to. But it's because their bait and what they're using, what they're offering is so much more attractive. So when you really understand who the right people are, and you know where they spend their time so you can be there, and you've automated this process to make it easier for the job seeker, and you have the right bait in place, all of a sudden attracting is going to become so much easier. And I will tell you that most people ask me, well, if it's not pay, what is it? And I just got something this morning, actually, from ZipRecruiter. They surveyed a whole bunch of people coming out of college, and they said, what do they want? Benefits, surprisingly, was on the list, which if you're a small business, I know that can be a challenge to compete on benefits. Hybrid work environment was on the list. So if you can allow it, and I get not all jobs can, we do a lot of stuff in the trades and with construction, and you can't let somebody build a building from their living room. So that doesn't always work, but hybrid work environments, if it's possible, was on the list. And the number one thing on the list was training and development. And I know that often small businesses think, well, we don't have a training and development program. We don't have formalized training for them. And I never said it was formalized training and development. They just want training and development. So if you can assign them a mentor, maybe it's a peer, or heck, if you've got some time to invest and grow somebody into a position, to a higher level position, that can go a long ways to getting the right people interested in not only joining your team, but also sticking around long term. So do not discount yourself and think, I can't compete. I don't have what it takes. I don't have the training program. I don't have the great benefits. It's amazing what taking what you currently have, putting it out there and sharing it with the world can do to help you attract the right people. So you don't always have to resort back to this idea of it's got to be high pay, or, well, it used to work. I don't understand why it's not working anymore. It's because you have companies out there, like I said earlier, you have companies willing to spend more than you. You'll also have companies that are putting more effort into their recruiting. The reality is recruiting is a marketing activity. And if you've never thought of it that way before, it's time to shift your thinking. Because when you treat recruiting like marketing, you're going to put better information out about your company. You're going to be more forthcoming with the cool stuff that you're doing. And you're going to make sure you put it in the front of the right people. Just like when you go to your marketing team and you're like, hey, I need more customers. They say, great, tell me about your customer. And you tell them. And they say, well, I think your customers are on Facebook. And you're like, great. So what do they want to consume on Facebook? It's like, well, we got to cut through the noise. And so you start having this conversation on how do you get the right message in front of the right people. And that's all we're looking to do here. So the next one that I run into, I mentioned this earlier, is we don't put in the time that we need to attract somebody or to recruit the right people. And if you're watching this right now and you're anything like most entrepreneurs or small businesses that I know, you have more work than you have time. It's just that simple. And when we need people, often we need people because we're losing out on something, which means it's associated with gain, right? Like I can't take on more clients because I don't have enough people, versus I can't serve the clients I have because I don't have enough people. I don't hear that as often. So we often think, you know what, I have time to do this. Here's what happens when you take your time. You get a couple of guys fishing here and there's one on the line and they want you to reach out to them and they want you to interview them and they want you to get them on the bus. But then your competition is sitting there swimming going, well, I think I'm going to get to them first. The average time it takes somebody to contact a new applicant is 6.9 days. It's the average time. Imagine a customer calls you on Monday, and then the following Sunday night, you call them back. You're like, hey, I got your message. I know that you had a busted pipe in your living room and your house was flooding, but hey, we finally got back to you. They tell you to take a hike because they already called someone else. When someone's applying for a job, they don't have the luxury of massive savings account or being able to take their time. They usually have to make a decision and they have to make it quickly. And whoever gets back to them soonest, whoever gets them the information that they're looking for the fastest is going to win. So if you're spending, I can be a little forgiving on 12 hours, maybe 24 hours from the time the application comes in. But our target, when we do this for our clients or we coach our clients, is 15 minutes from the time the application comes in. That application comes in within 15 minutes, your team's contacting you. And I always get asked the question, well, am I supposed to call them or email them or text them? Yes, all three. Do it in this order though. Call them first, leave them a voicemail, then text them, then email them. By leaving the voicemail on their cell phones, you're going to be more likely to get through the spam filters when you text. Because they'll have already seen that number come through and the phones will be like, well, this is a real person. They'll have to voicemail. Now they're texting from the same number. You'd be more likely to get through. But all three, because you never know if they're going to be able to answer your call. Maybe they're at work and they don't want their boss to know, so they can't take the call. but you send them a text and they're like, I got 2 seconds, I can reply. And they reply to you. Or maybe they applied on their lunch break and they'll get back to you in the afternoon, and email is going to be a better way for them to find that than a text message that gets lost because it's already read. Be quick, be persistent. If after 3 days of reaching out and contacting them, you've heard nothing, which is pretty typical for a lot of applicants these days, a lot of employers tell me that, move on. Just move on, because somebody else probably already got to them. So those are my fishing analogies. And I have one more to share, which is people always ask me, well, if Indeed's not the best place to go and the job boards aren't that good, and I really don't have the team to get really involved in the community, what else can I do to attract good people? How can I hire good people, get them on my team, and make sure that they're engaged, productive, profitable employees? And the fastest way to do that is with a good employee referral program. But most people tell me, well, I've got one, but it doesn't work. Or, you know what? I launched it a year ago, and in that first month, I got 2 great employees and I loved them because employee referrals are awesome. But I just don't get very many. I don't get as many as I need. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why it doesn't work. The biggest reason is your people do not know how to actually make the referral. So we work a lot in the construction and the trades. So if I go up to someone who's an iron worker and I say, hey, can you refer me to your friends? This guy knows how to weld. He knows how to place steel. He doesn't know how to sell your company and make it seem like attractive. So what's he do? He waits for the opportunity. When his buddy calls him and says, yeah, I just got laid off, man. How's that company you're working for? Oh, they're great. They're great. You should come over here. They got this referral program. They got great onboarding, and then they can do it. But they're less likely to go to the people that we all want, which are those who are currently employed, right? We don't want the referral from the guy that's sitting on his mom's couch playing Xbox all day. We want the guy that's gainfully employed. We know he's got a work ethic. We know he can do the work. That's who we want referred to us. So what do we do as employers? We tell them, hey, if your person comes over and they stay 30, 60, 90 days, I'll give you a couple $100. And then we don't understand why that's not enough. Because here's what's happening. That iron worker is leaving the office or the job site, and he's heading down to his buddies. And this is the conversation he has because he doesn't know better.
Yeah.
Right? They go to their buddy and they're like, hey, my boss is going to give me money if you quit your job. What do you think your wife's going to think? Like, what? Because they don't know how to refer. We don't equip them with these scripts. We don't coach them on this. We don't role play with them. I mean, we do that with our sales team all the time, but we never do it with our people when we ask them to refer. And think about this. That buddy has to go back to his wife and say, hey, I'm going to quit my job. Number one, risk the livelihood of our family because maybe this place isn't that good. And she's sitting here thinking, no way. You stick it out where you're at, you're not leaving, especially if you're only going to give a couple $100. So I'm often asked, like, what works then? And I'll tell you, probably the most popular one that we get, that we see work, is paid time off. Especially if you're recruiting hourly employees, because hourly employees typically don't get PTO. But imagine that he goes up to me, he goes, hey, I know your wife's still mad at me for that last crazy idea, but check this out. I know she's been really wanting to go visit the in-laws, but you guys, you can't take time off work because you have no PTO where you're currently at. Well, my boss has made a deal that if you let them know I referred you, you're going to get 3 days of PTO after you've been there 90 days. Now, all of a sudden, the buddy goes to his wife and says, you know how I feel about your parents, but I know you've been wanting to take the trip. Here's the deal. I can get 3 days paid time off if I go to another employer because they value time with family. They value time away from the workplace. So if you let me quit my job, in 90 days, we can go visit them. And I don't have to take a cut in pay. And it actually might be a better place to work. He doesn't even have to mention the fact that the referrer gets 3 days paid time off too, right? You don't have to say it. It's not about him anymore. It's about the new employee. And depending on what you're paying, often giving somebody 3 days PTO so they can take a long weekend is way less expensive than giving them $1,000 or $2,000 referral fee, which we're starting to see a lot more of. So it can be very powerful when you stop thinking about the person that's on your team and rewarding them, and you start thinking about the person that they're referring in and rewarding the new employee. Be very, very powerful and very, very effective. So those are some of my tips. Some of the things I want you to think about if you're struggling to recruit, if you're struggling to hire, if you're struggling with employee referrals. I want you to start thinking about things a little bit differently. I want you to make sure that you're very clear on who you need to join your team. You know exactly where those people are spending their time so you can go fishing in the right spots. I want you to have the right gear. An applicant tracking system is only one piece in your tackle box that will help you attract and hire the right people. I want you to make sure you're using the right bait. It's not all about pay anymore. And make sure you have a process in place that you can get back to these people super, super fast, because somebody else is not only spending more money than you, they're moving faster than you are. I promise you. And often job seekers, they don't have the luxury of time. So we have to get to them as fast as possible. And then finally, if you want to move quickly, and you want to explore an employee referral program, rethink the way you propose it, rethink the way you equip your team with the information, and maybe even give them some scripts. Share with them some ideas on how they can have that conversation and who they need to have that conversation with. There you go, Greg.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Those are all really, really good points. I think the thing where we are that everybody is trying to wrap their brain around and work with is we are in the social media age.
Yeah.
And all of these pieces fit together. I think these are all fabulous points you made. And from one of your previous information pieces, what kept coming into my head was that you mentioned in another post that 73% of all the workforce is passively considering leaving their job. And you know what? That's where you want the people. And it's kind of like you got to make yourself attractive, but no longer is it the straight up, here's the ad in the newspaper, the head-on approach. It's a whole process where all these pieces fit together. You know, your social reputation, where you are on the boards, what you offer, how you are, everything. And I think that this has to be considered, and this is why it's the number one problem for everybody as of April. You know, they're not attracting. Well, the reason they're not attracting is they're going the wrong way. You know, they're not considering all these nuances.
Yeah, and having a plan and having a process, a system in place so that you can trust when someone comes in, they're going through and they're having the best experience that they've ever had. It's not difficult to do, but you do have to be intentional about it. And when you are, you will stand out from the crowd, and people will take notice, and recruiting will become much, much easier.
Yep, I agree. Well, thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it. And this will be up on my feed and put it in the page and everything. Remember that we have the Core Matters showcase page. Ryan's got his page. We put all the links in there, and you'll see them very shortly. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's Ryan's presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg.
About what to do. Little feedback there. So here's a post that has the free item that Ryan's offering everybody, and that's in the feed. And just click on that, and you'll immediately get the PDF link, and then that's yours. And you can go through. It's only about a 2 or 3 minute process. We'll evaluate your hiring system. Again, this is the number one problem everybody's having. It's now a bigger problem than inflation, and taxes is right behind inflation. So we're all dealing with all these different things. So I hope you really enjoyed this. Again, it's going to be up on my feed. It's going to be on my YouTube channel, Greg Andruk Business Freedom Conversation, where you can access it forever. Just search it over there. And I hope this really helped you a lot. So signing off for the Business Freedom Conversation Live, this is Greg Andruk. Good business to you.